to see you all. Welcome to Vienna. I got more of that stuff from more good remembering of Hanover, but finally we opened a new chapter, and I'm very glad that we're back in a new place. Hope you enjoy it. And I'm really glad that so many delegates are here for the first time. It's always a good sign. And of course, I do like to see all faces that, we met too long. We couldn't meet too long, and very glad that we do meet now. I'm an old guy, and I always think about old times. And this session is a follow-up. And I'd like to introduce you to what I want to do here with you. But first of all, thanks to the most important sponsors that are you. And of course, we have some companies here advertising, and we do like that they engage. So thank you again. I'm a consultant and trainer from Germany. My name is Thorsten Butz, and I've been a couple of times to Hanover, and now I'm here, and I want to talk about optimizing functions, advanced functions, commandlets in terms of speed. But this is just only one topic. So take care what I will show you. Chasing the seconds 2.0. What is that 2.0? I will explain that in a minute. I would like to introduce you to my podcast. Maybe you like some interviews with people from the PowerShell universe. I had a lot of them in my show. I met Bruce Payette, I met Jeffrey Snover, and you already saw Joey Aiello, and many, many more. So maybe you're interested in that. Besides the fact that it's a DE domain, Sliding Windows is the name of the podcast. It's sometimes in English, sometimes in German. So you will find something that you're interested in. Why am I here? I did like Hanover. I love Vienna. But let's be honest, I needed one more mug. So forgive me, my collection is very important. And I hope it goes on forever. Let's talk about chasing the seconds. I've been to PowerShell Europe quite a couple of times, and from time to time, I see breathtaking presentations. I see things that are completely surprising. But honestly, the second that I go out of the room, very, very likely I will never use that script that I just saw. Again, I will never fiddle around with that. I'm totally impressed, but it's not my daily life. The daily cycle of work is often very boring, and sometimes topics that are not so breathtaking from their title are actually very, very valuable. And I'd like to point you to a colleague of mine that presented Chasing the Seconds 1.0, Øyvind Kallstad. Greetings to him. And this is one of those amazing sessions that I really like in terms of I frequently go to the YouTube channel, I frequently go to the GitHub, grab the scripts and go through it again and again, because it really has some meaning in my daily life. And when I thought about what can I do for PowerShell Conference now that 2 years that we didn't meet after the pandemic, I thought about what could be really useful in your daily life. And I'm quite sure the same things that are useful for me. So I thought, what are the things that people typically do wrong? Or maybe they do it in a certain way, which might not be optimal. So let's find out what that is. Just a quick comment to Øyvind's talk. You can still find it, of course. He talked about optimizing file access. How can you find files on your local hard drive, which is a very, very familiar task for all of us, but it's surprising what he found out back in those days. But let's come to what I want to show you today. I consider myself to be an advocate for regular people. So there is one issue for me. Most of you are not regular people. You are PowerShell enthusiasts. You are, I'm pretty sure, IT professionals with very high knowledge special interested, that's because you're here. But we all know your interest in PowerShell and your expertise, that might not be the same for any of your colleagues. And if we think about PowerShell and the future of PowerShell, I think we can split up the community into different parts. There are some people who actually do not care about commandlets at all, because they come maybe from a developing background, they are very good in programming, developing in C#, and they create their own stuff. And they know that it's often way better to go back to the .NET classes and create your own routines, and they don't even use commandlets. The problems if you behave like that is that you might be the one guy that is asked in your company again and again and again and again. You cannot give your scripts to anyone else because nobody else gets it. It might be hard to understand. I often say, I think PowerShell must be something like the command.exe 2.0. Let's start by ipconfig. Let's start by ping. Let's start by traceroute and stuff like that, and as lookup. I think every IT professional in our space is absolutely capable of handling these commands. And if you think about PowerShell, of course you can also utilize ipconfig, ping, and stuff like that. But we all know the beauty of PowerShell is that object orientation, that we get rich objects. And to meet the expectation of mere mortals, normal guys, colleagues that are not so heavily interested in PowerShell, I think we need good commands. And I found one good commandlet. You all know that. It's a pretty boring commandlet, I know. Test connection, it's nothing else than a ping. But the fun, if you compare it to that classical ping.exe, is that you can address multiple targets. I think this is very, very charming. And of course, you get back rich objects for the results of the destination host that you ping. And the fun thing is that if you think about the first line and you address multiple servers that you want to contact and find out, does my network work? You can do that by providing a parameter. You see it here in example number 8. But you can also do the same thing by pipelining. And you have the choice between what I show you in example B, pipelining by value, and you can also create your own object and pipe that as an object to test connection, and all of the three things will work. And beyond that simple ping, we are also able to do a little port scan. I know it's not the best port scan in the world, it's pretty slow and stuff like that, but in many cases that is good enough. So I really do like that. But I want to talk about commandlets that are not as smart as this example. Because if you think about all the commandlets that you might use in daily life, you will find out that many commandlets do not support pipelining. Or maybe they do support pipelining by value, they don't support pipelining by property name. Or they do support pipelining, but they do not allow to provide an array as an argument, what I showed you in example number 8. And I think all of these variants should work. That is my expectation. My commandlet should always treat these items the same. And there's one more sad story. If you think about test connection and your experience with this commandlet, what I show you here only works in PowerShell 7. It doesn't work like that in PowerShell 5. So again, we have that trouble that just in this one example, we will find out that it has not always been perfect. Yeah, it took some time until PowerShell 7, until it worked like this. So, if we talk about our own functions, and I think it should always be like what you just saw before. my function should behave just like the perfect commandlet, just like test connection in my example. It should always support pipelining. It should always support that you provide dictionaries, collections, arrays as a parameter. If we talk about our function, this is where it all starts. You all know that. This is the boring stuff. Give me 5 minutes and we come to the interesting stuff, but I want to show you so that we're all up on the same level to give you some context. On the left-hand side, we have a simple function. No, nothing special. On the right-hand side, we do have what we call a commandlet, an advanced or a script commandlet. And to my personal surprise, some people do not even know that this, on the right-hand side, is a fully functional commandlet. You might like to call it like this, because we all know from here in this room, we all know that there is a certain history of PowerShell, and in the beginning, PowerShell.1 commandlets were written in C#. And so we had that what we call today binary commandlets, and later on these script commandlets were introduced. And some people struggle a little bit with the wording, but commandlets are actually both of them. Binary commandlets are also commandlets, script commandlets, advanced functions are also commandlets. What's the difference? The difference actually is commandlet binding. Honestly, it's not much more. There's one more thing. It's the naming of the commandlet. You should stick to the rules. A commandlet should have a proper name. On the left-hand side, a verb, you know that. On the right-hand side, a noun. But from a technical perspective, it's just that commandlet binding. And the only thing that changes is that PowerShell enables a lot of features. And my first example is always write verbose. If you remove that commandlet binding, write verbose will not longer work. Write verbose in this context is only supported on the right-hand side. So this simply is a very, very simple function. No? Let's come to what I really want to show you, and of course it's always the best to show you in code. So just let's switch to some, again, very, very simple examples here. Let's start with that. This is where my function starts. I give it a proper name, invoke something, I enable the commandlet binding, maybe you want to have an alias, that's not so very important. And one of the first things that I usually do is I do allow pipelining. So let's just find out what happens when I enable this little piece of code. I just run this, and then I can do it. This, and here we see what's the outcome. So, you will see that I can provide a couple of computer names, but if I do it like this, I run into a problem, because PowerShell doesn't really see that this is a list of computers. You will find out if you try it just the other way around. So let's see, what is that? And then you will see, oh, there is a difference. There shouldn't be a difference, right? So let's find out what's the problem here. The simple thing is we should ask ourselves, what is the type of that computer name in this case? So let's find out. Let's write it here. So, and I do a command here. So enable it again. And I hope you can see that I will leave it open. And one more time. And you see, okay. In this first example, he recognized that this is a proper array, okay. And gets in the second example, okay. But just one more thing. You see, oh, it's just a string. So, because I simply forgot one thing. If you want to process multiple strings by like this, I have to enable a kind of loop here. And this is what I have to do. I need to tell him that he should process this multiple times. So let's find out what happens if I call that again. Clear it here. So again, nothing special here, nothing special changes. But the second time I do this, you find out, I get the answer twice. So this is what I wanted. I wanted PowerShell to recognize that there are multiple objects. So let's remove that. Do the comment here. And finally, you see the difference. Still it works that I can provide multiple items like this. And now I can also provide it like this. But you still see a difference. Because if you count the objects that return here, you will find out that number 18 will only return one object, and number 19 will return two objects. So it's a little bit of difference if you call an array here, or if you call an array like this. So let's change that a little bit and think about what will happen when we do not work with a pipeline. What will happen if we do it simply like this? I remove the pipeline functionality. One more time. So let's clear that here. And nothing special changed. So, and now you see the pipeline isn't supported anymore, and just because I said that the parameter must be given, I just run into that error that I have to tell him here. This is my Vienna computer number 99, and yeah, then it might work. The problem is that if I want to enable the technique that you see in line 17, I have to do one more thing. And we will see in 5 minutes that actually I have to compare those both ideas. So what is missing here is simply, let's go to this, that I have to be a little bit more precise. And you just saw I switched to my third item so that you can see it here in all its beauty. I have not yet cared too much about the kind of data that is given by the user, but we all know that we should provide a string if we expect a string. And the most important thing is that if I want to allow the user that he provides multiple strings, I should tell this to PowerShell, and I simply do it like this. So, as you know, it's pretty easy to create arrays, but if you want it to be array of strings, you have to do it like this. So let's find out what the difference is now, and I'm pretty sure that you all know about these little items, but when we will find out in 5 minutes what that really means in terms of speed, if you really focus on data that you want to have for multiple computers in your network, wait a second, how surprising that will be. So, one more thing. I read the function here. So, a little bit smaller, but you can see it. And now, I also enabled verbose. Now you see the difference, right? You see that he really understood that the user provides strings. It's still an array, no doubt, but he separates the items, and you get back 2 of them. Yeah, and finally, what will happen now, because I also supported pipeline here above, as you can see, this will also work. But there's one thing missing, and the one thing missing is that you have to create yet another loop. This is the one thing that is new in this example number 3. Why should I have to do this? The problem is that I need this for each loop or any other kind of loop. I guess for each is in this case is most common. You need this simply if the user provides the computer name just like in line 25. And you need that to create those single items, to get a real collection back. So, this is the basic stuff. I think you have all fiddled around with that. And if you want to create user-friendly commandlets, I think you should always have a structure just like that. But let's think about real life. What do you do in real life? I'm quite sure that many of us do not actually focus so much on a local computer. Most of us focus on a complete network. For example, if you do client deployment or you manage a bunch of servers, you have multiple servers, multiple Windows 10 computers, multiple Windows 11, multiple Linux boxes in your environment. And you simply want to run single commands, but you want to run these commands against multiple computers. So there's a very simple solution to that. This is invoke command. And the nice thing about invoke command, as you will see in 5 minutes, invoke command gives you a lot of freedom. Invoke command gives you the freedom not to use stuff like that. You don't need it, because invoke command has a built-in functionality, we call it fan-out remoting, that invoke command processes your commands asynchronously, in parallel, so you don't actually have to create that loop. But the interesting thing is, how does that relate to this begin, process, and end block? Because we have to add one more thing here so that you really understand where are these funny blocks are required for. The funny thing is that, also I created another item where you can see that. The funny thing is that there are operations that you want to execute, but if you will run the whole script and you run it against 10, 20, 200, 500 computers, you only want to run this single command once. And my perfect example is stuff like that. Copyright notice. Do you actually want that your script creates a copyright notice 500 times? No. If you call it against 500 computers, no. So the perfect example to me to understand how this works is to give back to the user some information that is needed only once the script started. And yet another perfect example, which is always part of my scripts, is I'm always looking for speed. I want to make my scripts fast. And that's, of course, is the reason why I always measure the time. So what I do is I start a stopwatch in the beginning, and when I'm done, below here, I simply measure the time that it took all. And if I run this, you will exactly see what's the value of begin, process, and end. So let's find out. I run it. And I collapse it here, so I think we can see it a little bit better. So, and take care. Let's start again. This is the way we want it. I see my copyright notice 1, and below I see the result of the stopwatch. And the same thing when I do it via pipelining. It's absolutely the same. This is what I want to provide to my users. And the last item, so if any one of you does not know what is pipelining by property name, pipelining by property name is simply the idea that you have an object where the title of the property is nothing else than the parameter that you want to address. And the easiest thing to create an object from my point of view is a CSV file, but you always can create a PS custom objects, and there are a million of other possibilities. So this is just what I wanted to show you here. So the only difference in this example is that I only have one computer. But you see, everything works as it should. But now, I told you this is more or less the things that I expect you to know. I just want to give you context, and I want you to remember that you saw that before and that it has a meaning. I was always looking for a blueprint, and you already saw such a blueprint. But I have the idea that this blueprint is not yet perfect. So I did one thing. I thought about what do people in real life? And I said, people organize networks just like a swarm of bees. And just as the bees, they collect honey, but they do it asynchronously. This is just the way that we do. I just said that. So I had in my mind what would be a typical example for that. And searching for the blueprint in terms of the bees, it would look like that. We will come back to that in a minute. But let's talk about real life. And I think a very typical example is collecting software that is installed on a certain computer or collect some basic hardware information. So I found out that this is a typical example, isn't it? You will find that in every PowerShell book. You will find that in a lot of blogs. People talk about that. Tobias Weltner has a great article about this stuff with much more details. If you want to find out, does my user have the latest version of Firefox or Chrome browser or whatever, you just look up in the look it up in the registry. So that's the idea. And the next thing is that, what about hardware? What devices do my users use? So that might be another thing that you frequently do. I made it intentionally simple. You can do this way more sophisticated, but I wanted to show you the essence. And we will find out what do these tasks mean if I run them against a couple of computers in my network. So what did I do? I created 50 computers in Azure VMs. And if you might like to ask why 50, because this is my quota that I was allowed. Actually, I wanted to create 100 machines, but as you might know, there are quotas in Azure, and I came to a limit, and it was 50 machines. Or to be exactly precise, I had a bunch of servers, and I had 48 client computers. And I thought, can I measure difference? Can I measure a difference if I address them by pipelining? Can I measure a difference when I provide that as an array with a parameter? Can I measure something? And we will see that in a minute. So let's find out what's up here. This is my first example script. And I will dive in here a little bit deeper and zoom it in. You will later catch that from the repository and try that on your own. The interesting thing is that I only allowed to provide the computer name as an array. And as you will find out, it's almost the same that I already showed you. I start my stopwatch. You will see that in line number 15. And I simply measure what's up here. So let's find out what's going on and take care. I only created a process block. I see that very often at my customers. If at all, they simply create process blocks. You just saw why. But you have to keep in mind, a process block is called multiple times if you do it by pipelining. But that's not the case here. So just wait. What will happen here? I'm going to run it now. This is the function. And I call my computers from the Active Directory. You see that in line 37. And we just grab the results and measure what comes out here. We just need a few seconds that it runs. Yeah. Here's that call. My Active Directory, my Azure environment only exists of these machines, but they have a couple of software packages installed, more than 500, on 48 different computers, as you can see. So now you see the runtime. It is 11,000 milliseconds in this case. I did a couple of measurements. You will see that in a PowerPoint slide at the end, what I found out as an average value. So the numbers are not so very important. I just call it, and I want to show you the results. This is what my script code looks like. I use the glorious import Excel module. Very, very useful, I think. And you see these are my machines. VEI is for Vienna, client computers, and you see this is what is installed over there. And I also can filter it here for a certain application, Bing wallpaper, which computers do have it. As you can see, it seems to be quite popular. This is what my script does. Nothing fancy, but I'm interested in the time it takes if I compare pipelining to providing it as an array. So let's go to the next example, and let's find out what does that mean if I run that a multiple time. And now you will find out I'm not anymore interested in the results. I just want to see what will happen if I run it 10 times. Because let's be honest, measuring once doesn't mean anything. So I measured everything 10 times. It should be even more, but I thought 10 times gives you a brief overview. So I know you see what happens. I do get the numbers back, and it's something like 2,000 milliseconds. Okay, pretty interesting. The first one was pretty slow, so the average timing is a bit higher. So, but let's keep in mind it's 4 seconds, something like that. We will see. So, next thing, let's recreate that example with pipelining. So, let's go to the next one. So, it's always more or less the same. And this time I do it via pipelining, as you can see. Exactly what you saw before in my simplified example. And the important thing here is that now I have to take care of the begin, process, and end block, because in terms of pipelining, I need to take care that it iterates over it. So my invoke command, and this is very important now, is inside the process block. And I tell you a secret, this is not the best idea. We will find out in a minute. I'm very curious what will come out here, and I have an idea that this is not the perfect solution. So let's find out. So here's the process block, and here's the invoke command. So why is that not clever? It's not really smart. If you think about it, if you provide 10 computer names, you will call the process block 10 times. So we will call invoke command 10 times. But invoke command mustn't be called 10 times. Invoke command is capable of handling arrays, so I assume this can't be faster than my first example. So let's find out. How long does that take? So I just run it once to see if it works, and then we will have the same measurement again. And okay, the first try was pretty slow, but okay, one measurement doesn't count, so let's find out what does that mean. But again, you see it's the same result, nothing else than what we saw before. So now we do the measurement. And I tell you a little secret while you see it running here. You will notice that I cheat a little bit. I don't type it here. And it's pretty easy to explain why I do it. First of all, the internet connection here at the hotel is not so perfect that I really want to try it live. But there is another very important thing. What you see now is fast forward. So the time that it takes is not what it looks like. I recorded that measurement before, and I doubled, or even more, I doubled the time that the video plays here. So, because if I would run it 10 times as slow as it is now, we will see that in the numbers. We will sit here until 4 o'clock, and the next presenter will be pretty upset because my session takes so long. So we will find out the average time here is 30 seconds. Think about that. So, and remember, it was fast forward so that we could do it. So, next item. What if we do a little bit different? As I told you, it is not very clever to call invoke command again and again and again, because it's absolutely capable of handling arrays. So what I do now is that I pre-create the array in terms of pipelining, and I simply move the invoke command to the end block. That is the secret. And you will find out that this is very, very much farther. To me, it feels wrong when I tell it to customers, when I show it to them. It seems to, no, that's not the way we do it, because the process block is the obvious one that seems to be right. But you will find out that it absolutely makes sense to move the invoke command just to the end and use the process just as a loop to create the array. That's it. And you will find out that at the end, this is very much faster, and it doesn't matter if you do it by pipelining or if you do it via the parameter and providing the array itself. So, and you saw, I'm back 3 to 4 seconds, something like that. You see the numbers in a second. But I thought, what could I do which is even more, what is even nicer? I thought, what would you do? And what came in my mind is, what about PowerShell sessions? Would it make sense to create up front a PowerShell session and let invoke command run against that session? That would be an idea, right? Or anything else? We will find out. So my next test, we're almost through. My next test, you see it here, is I create sessions. To create a PowerShell session is a very, very good idea. But if you only want to run one single task, you create a little bit of overhead. That it's obvious, because you need to create the session, you need to remove the session, and you only use it once. But a session is a perfect idea if you use it more than once. And now I want to find out, is it faster or slower with or without session? And we will see the session in my environment doesn't seem to have a disadvantage. Then if you see now, we were at 4 seconds more or less. Now it's 2 seconds. So it's a little bit faster. This may be by accident. So, but at least it's not a disadvantage, at least here in this case. So one last thing, and then I show you the numbers that I collected. I would like to create a super user-friendly commandlet. And what I did now is I tested if my computers are online. On first sight, this seems to be a pretty good idea, right? Because I don't have to address computers that are offline. But the problem is you will see that the test itself takes a lot of time. And the main question is, do I really lose information? If, for example, if I just use this as an inventory, those computers who are offline, shut down, at home, I don't care about them. I just want to have a brief overview of those machines that I reach. And in this case, actually, it doesn't really matter. The second that I create a PowerShell session, the computer will find out if it's present or not, if it works or not. So I will find in the results that I reached them or I didn't. So actually, I don't care. And what you see now is that the validate script took a whole lot of time. But there's one more thing. The problem is these machines were all online. And think about what will happen when those machines are offline. And I will show you the number now, the numbers. This is what you just saw. And don't take that for granted. This is just my test in my Azure environment. But what you will see here is that pipelining within the process block is by far too slow. It's 10 times slower, and I did everything 10 times. So again, I think this really gives you a good overview. Nothing else, but a good overview. The best thing in this case were obviously the sessions. And not so really good was the idea to test if the computers are online. I did that again with my WMI test. And if you observe the clock, you will find out I will not have the time to show you all the different tests. It doesn't matter. I just took the code in the GitHub repository. It's already there. You can take it and try that on your own, in your own environment. The interesting thing is that if you do it with PowerShell sessions, just querying the registry, or if you simply call a WMI item, it's not that big. The big picture is always the same. And if you translate these numbers, 2 seconds compared to 25 seconds, this is 10 times more. So think about what is if your script takes 1 minute. It's a huge difference between 1 minute and 10 minutes from my perspective. But it's getting worse. I also tried to avoid the PowerShell sessions, and I also tested CIMSessions, which some people might like to use. And you see, you don't have a real advantage. So I can stick to that, to the view that CIMSessions are actually not useful. You can use that, but I don't see any value. What my measurement shows is at least it's not faster and the results are the same. So paint your own picture. But now it's getting interesting. If you put half of my computers offline, if you shut them down, then it's really amazing. Then the software inventory took 9 minutes for one run. If you don't do it the smart way, and if you do it the smart way with the session approach and put it all in the end block, it just 23 seconds. So this is really what I wanted to show you. This is exactly what you need to know. So finally, I think begin, process, and end, they deserve your creativity. They deserve that you really focus on them. You should concentrate on these 3 blocks. You can get a lot more out of your scripts. That's all that I wanted to show you. So this is just an overview. And yeah, finally, validating scripts. It might be useful, but simply in terms of time measurement, it's not a very good idea. The processing methods are very, very important. And what's most important to me, I think, don't think about yourself. You might say that I always provide the array by parameter, I don't care. But your users might behave the other way around. So support them, and you see it's very, very easy. Let's come back to the bees. This is what my blueprint looks like. And the fun thing is that if you look at it, this structure applies to 1 billion scripts. I don't say that it applies to everything. No, it doesn't. But you can use that for so many, many use cases. And I really want you to try that on your own. That's it. That is simply what I wanted to show you. And I hope you get a little bit, you got a little bit inspired by that approach. And I always like it when you start creating pictures, but as I told you, it's already in the GitHub repository, everything, and this will be merged with the GitHub repository from the conference. So try that on your own, and you see it can be a huge difference. So, yeah, I spoiled the presentation a little bit because actually we should talk for 30 minutes. It'll give you a little bit more room for questions, but I think all the presenters use the 45 minutes for their own stuff, so I apologize. But do you have any questions? There's still time. If there are questions, grab me outside, we drink a coffee, and I hope that you take some value out of it and look it up and try it on your own. So thank you, and enjoy the conference.